Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Sorry we were a bit late. We had a few technical issues here at the Cycling UK end, but we're all up and running now. Welcome. Thanks for joining in. Thanks for tuning in to our webinar. This webinar is brought to you by Cycling UK, and it's part of Bike Week. This week is Bike Week, and we're doing a host of different webinars to celebrate that. And we're looking at providing practical advice and real-life examples of how to support and encourage more people to ride a bike. And these webinars will explore different aspects of creating a cycling culture and very much looking at post-COVID and the world that is changing in front of our eyes at the moment. This webinar today is focusing all around habit and how we build new habits, and particularly looking at post-COVID. We've got 4 excellent speakers lined up for today's webinar, and I'll introduce them all to you in a second. My name is James Scott, and I'm the Director of Behaviour Change and Development within Cycling UK. I look after all of our behaviour change work and ensure that we have behaviour change running throughout all of our work across Cycling UK. Now, over the past 3 months, many of us have been forced to change our behaviour, especially the way we travel, the way we work, and the way we socialise. And in doing this, new habits have formed. Unfortunately, this has all been forced upon us by a global pandemic. But COVID definitely has the potential to fundamentally reshape our towns and cities, particularly the way we travel around them. And cycling and walking is very much at the forefront of the transformation. Now, I'm sure, like me, you've seen many people on bikes during the past 3 months. Many of them we wouldn't class as regular cyclists. Lots of families cycling out, lots of people out on bikes, consuming it that we've never seen before, which is extremely exciting for us that are involved in active travel. Sport England actually did a survey last week where they found there was a doubling of cycling during lockdown. The cycling has increased from 8% to 15%. But is this just a phase? And can we ensure this doubling of cycling is turned into a long-term behaviour that becomes automatic and as well is just something that we do? What can be done to help embed this behaviour and for it to become a habit? And that's what we're really exploring during this webinar now. And our 4 speakers should definitely be able to help answer some of those questions. Now, with any behaviour, it's always best to look at the environment and the context that surrounds it. And to help paint this picture, I'd like to welcome our first speaker. He's got a limited amount of time with us, but I'd really like to welcome Chris Heaton-Harris, Minister for Cycling and Walking. Chris, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. It would be great if you could just talk to us about the government's plans for active travel post-COVID and now, and what you think your ideas are on creating a habit going forward.
Yeah, and well, firstly, James, thanks for having us, and good afternoon. As you can see, I haven't got the sexiest of backdrops that you have. I'm in my parliamentary office. We are back in Westminster, and so surrounded by plush curtains and a wall that looks like I put it up behind me, but forgive me for that. Next time I shall try harder and get a decent cycling backdrop of some type. And thank you, actually, just whilst I'm on, saying thank you for Cycling UK for being the driving force behind Bike Week 2020, which I generally think is a really important thing to be doing at this time. No one needs reminding that the past few months have brought immense challenges for us all. And actually, cycling's been a release for a whole group of people as well. There's a massive positive piece of news that could come out of the situation that we've been going through. And it's something that throughout lockdown, millions of people have discovered or rediscovered, and that's ways of getting active and getting about. And as a result, cycling has never been so popular. As you know, bike sales have taken off. Repair shops and mobile repair guys and girls are as busy as they've ever been, struggling to cope with demand. And all over the country, the public have been digging out bikes out of their sheds and garages and cupboards and under the stairs, and polishing them off, dusting them down, and pedaling. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been I've seen it. I live in rural Northamptonshire, and I don't let anybody connect to my Strava app, as I'm sure other apps are available. In fact, I know they are. But I've never been cycling as much as I have been in and around Northamptonshire, and never actually gone as far as I've gone before. I guess it was helped by car journeys dropping in the first few weeks of the pandemic to, I think in week 3 it was like 1955 levels of travel by cars, which made our roads an unbelievably pleasant place to cycle. But we're in a different phase now. We're trying to, you know, we hope we flattened the curve. We're coming out of this stage of the pandemic, and we are really keen to ensure that we kind of embed some of these changes that people have seen in how they engage in active travel. And so as we start the economic recovery, we're encouraging people, we need people actually, to avoid public transport. As well as the responsibility for cycling, I've got responsibility for railways. And yes, we're investing millions in our railways, and yes, we are, you know, they've never been as clean and actually never been as punctual as they've ever been. But because of the social distancing requirements, they just simply don't have the capacity that we need for everybody to get on them if they were to require them to go to work again. And so we need to maintain what we've been using the railways and our buses for in the last few weeks, which are for key workers to get to the places they need to go. So we are really keen to be on the front foot and get people to embed this habit that they've now got into and cycle a lot more. Now, we know there's a lot that needs to be done, and you would have seen that we've announced a £2 billion package of funding for active travel in the next 5 years. It's the biggest ever boost for cycling and walking. It was hinted at the beginning of the year. So you know, these are plans that aren't just COVID responsive. These are plans that we've been developing, but COVID has brought them to the fore, and probably a bit quicker than we would have, a pace we would have gone at normally. So my department's already announced how it's going to initially allocate 225 million of the funding, of the 250 million pound funding for this particular year. In this particular tranche, it's going to go to local authorities to get on with immediate measures for pop-up lanes and protected space for cyclists, and widening pavements, safer junctions, cycle and bus only corridors, all that sort of thing. But that money is going out the door in the next few days, in fact. And the allocations have been essentially local authorities know what monies they're getting. And you know, in this short space of time, the local authorities are the best people to be dealing with this first phase of spending. 25 million quid out of the 250 million will go towards getting people getting their bicycles repaired, so they can get their old bikes back in working order. And so you'll see the voucher scheme be launched, which is going to provide £50 to members of the public to get their old bikes up and working again. So with all this support, we hope that you know, as the country emerges from lockdown, people will actually change a kind of lifestyle that they've got used to, and turn it into a proper habit. Actually use it all the time and keep going with it. And all this money is just the beginning. We're hoping that the investment in active travel will actually provide some of the bounce back from our hit from the coronavirus as we change our habits for good. We all know, and people on this webinar will know for sure, be converts to the fact that, you know, cycling, active travel is good for you for so many reasons: health and well-being, sorting out road congestion, improving air quality, creating safer towns and cities. You know, the list is really, really long, and we are absolutely, as a government, committed to the aims and ambitions that we set out in the cycling and walking investment strategy a little while ago, and we are really determined to try and make cycling, or active travel at the very least, the choice for people for shorter journeys as part of a longer journey by 2040, and to double cycling activity in the next 5 years. So cycling has never been so popular, it's never had so much money spent on it, people have never been so keen about it, local authorities are ambitious in their plans, and we are keen to make sure that the standards are absolutely pucker, so the stuff that we invest in as taxpayers is resilient and does the job it's meant to do. And so from Leicester to London to Liverpool, you know, authorities are already putting up high quality pop-up cycleways, widening pavements, and allowing people to take advantage of the new situation. So we're really keen to get this right. We've got some money out the door unbelievably quickly in government terms to set some of these new things in train, and I'm really hopeful that this will help people make healthier habits and make sure that the road, bus and rail networks are ready to can deal with what they need to deal with in the current time. So I guess I'll wind up by saying thanks. I know everyone will. I'm afraid I do have to go. I've got an unbelievably busy day today, and so I won't unfortunately hear the other speakers. But I'm assuming you're recording this, so I could look at it.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's being recorded. You can watch back.
And so, can I just thank you for your kind of dedication to this this task that you've been banging on about for a very long period of time, and one in which the Prime Minister is unbelievably ambitious to move on now. And thank you for your enthusiasm and expertise in supporting the government going forward. As the Prime Minister said, this is going to be a golden age for cycling. So let's work together to get the nation pedaling. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. Thanks for joining in. And yeah, I understand your time is very precious today, so we appreciate that. And you said some very salient points there, especially around the policy and getting the money out the door quickly. That will certainly help with habit formation. Some people have said they can't see your face here. I think that's one of the technical issues we have our end, so I apologise for that. Just one very quick question someone's posted.
They're just lucky.
Yeah. I can see you, and I can see the backdrop, and the wall does look like you did put it up yourself. There's a weird speaker in the middle of it. It's very bizarre.
Yeah.
So this one very quick question. Someone said, how can you travel actively into Westminster? Are you being encouraged to do that as a minister, as MPs at large? Is there a policy in line for that?
Yeah. So actually, I mean, theoretically, MPs are meant to be key workers, so we're allowed to travel on trains and stuff. Most people would have driven down, but you'd be surprised actually. Most MPs do actually walk and cycle in and out, but most walk, to be quite frank, because those that reside in the week down in London. And so I just in case you're wondering, I don't use the government car service that much, only if I absolutely have to, and I prefer to meander around London on a Santander bike or by foot if I possibly can.
Yeah, sure. And then there's just one other point, then we'll let you go. A lot of people here are very pro the investment, and why wouldn't you be? It's very exciting. A lot of them are saying that it's heavily going towards infrastructure. But what about the behaviour change? What about the soft measures? They're equally as important. Now, obviously, you and I obviously spoke about a couple of weeks ago on this very matter. On soft measures. I'm obviously a massive advocate for it, very passionate, that's what I do. But yeah, do you see an importance between hard measures and soft measures?
Yeah, and there's a big piece in education as well. And pre-COVID, we'd already announced, actually it turns out to be quite an ambitious target to get every kid through a bikeability scheme in school. And to try, I'm super keen on trying to also get their parents involved in this, so getting this cycling to school thing spot on and embedding that. And yeah, as you very kindly gave, we did my first ever virtual visit, if you recall, and it's fascinating to see how people can change and want to embed the change. It seems like a whole generation of people learned to cycle and then put their bikes away or got rid of them and completely forgot about it for a number of years. And this pandemic, the one thing that has happened is that they've all, lots and lots of them, not them all, but lots and lots of them have got their bikes out and are using. I mean, I've seen some crusty old bikes out on the road when I've been going around. My bike has actually had a clean. I didn't realize it was black. I thought it was a dark blue, but it turns out it's black. But because I cycle around a reservoir which is quite muddy on lots of occasions, on most occasions. So, but yeah, I completely get we need to change a mindset as well. But that's why you'll see all sorts of things coming forward. Pilots about social prescribing of cycling, because I know, and I know you know, James, but we need to be able to prove that it's unbelievably good for your health and actually mental health as well, to get on a bicycle and cycle around. So there's a whole host of different actions the government's going to take, but we're in a phase actually where we need to stimulate the economy and we need to get people to work, and public transport might not be the option that it was previously. And so this first bit of money is as I said, to get out the door, to allow that to be in a safe space for lots of people, and then we can look at the bigger picture and these wider pieces when we have a tiny bit more time.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Chris. We'll let you go now. Thank you so much for tuning in.
My pleasure.
And giving that introduction and setting the context and the environment for our other speakers as well. And we won't stop banging the drum at Cycling UK, and I'm sure you and I will talk soon about behaviour change as well. So thanks very much, and we'll talk soon.
My pleasure. Thank you ever so much.
Bye now. Great. Well, that was Chris Heaton-Harris MP and Minister for Cycling and Walking. I'm now going to introduce our other speakers, and hopefully they'll magically appear virtually on the screen as I introduce them. So we've got 3 other speakers now. We've got Mel Berry here. Oh, no, she's already gone off again. She was preempting that. Here we are. Mel, hello.
Hi, James.
Mel Berry, she's the co-founder of Her Spirit. We've got Jenny Box, who works for Cycling UK here. Jenny is our head of behaviour change and development. Hi, Jenny. And then we've got Miriam Bosborn, who works for the Dutch Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management. Hi, Miriam. I'll just run through what everyone does here very quickly. So Jenny Box, as I said, is our head of behaviour change and development for England. Jenny is going to be talking about how we influence behaviour through the behaviour change initiatives that we have within Cycling UK, and looking at our Big Bike Revival programme in particular, and specifically looking at how the programme achieves sustainable change through behaviour and the importance of soft measures. And quite a few of you coming through the questions here are asking about soft measures. I should also mention, please, I think a lot of you have grasped this already, if you have any questions, fire them through. After Mel, Jenny and Miriam have done their presentations, we're going to have about 10 minutes to do some questions, so please keep firing those through. We've got Mel Berry here, the co-founder of Her Spirit. Her Spirit is an online platform that harnesses the collective power of real women to help each other take small steps towards creating healthier habits for life, and not just for 30 days. And Mel is going to be looking at how Her Spirit utilises behaviour change and the model of behaviour change that they use. I'm specifically looking at getting more women active. When we look at the cycling statistics, historically there isn't a huge amount of women that cycle. They've got their campaign, which is called hashtag Every Minute Counts. I'm sure Mel will talk more about that. And then Miriam is going to be talking about international cycling policies and strategies, which is very much her expertise. We had a really fascinating chat yesterday. I'm really looking forward to this. And Miriam's going to talk about how we support habit-forming behaviours with a particular focus on cycling policies and looking at top-down policies and bottom-up. Is there a wrong way? Is there a right way? Miriam will let us know. And then talking about soft measures and hard measures and how they have to work cohesively together. We're going to go straight in. Jenny, it's the virtual floor is yours, and you're going to talk about all the work we do.
Thank you very much. And hopefully by magic, the presentation will appear. Almost. There we go. Well, I hope that's displaying for everybody as a whole screen. Okay, well, I'll crack on and conscious of time. So thank you, James, for the introduction there. And yes, really looking forward to hearing the other panelists as well. There we go. Wonderful. So I'm going to talk a bit about the types of behaviour change models that we use at Cycling UK and why those ones, and how we put them into practice to deliver our programmes. I think it's, as James and Chris talked about there earlier, it's really important to recognise that the landscape has changed, but through engagement with communities and understanding people's barriers and perceptions, we can start to support new and returning cyclists to continue as they return to work and on the school run and all those sorts of short journeys. So James mentioned there's been a huge increase in cycling across the country, reported increases of up to 200% increase, which is just incredible to see and really quite unusual and surprising perhaps in the sort of the climate that we're in. And Chris also mentioned there the increased investment into cycling and walking and what we can expect to see over the coming weeks and the money that's already going out to local authorities. And that's just the start of the changes to come. And then again mentioned the temporary infrastructure that's popping up all over the country, and we've got a great map on our website showing where things are happening at the moment, so you can find out what's happening in your community, or if your local authority and council are taking on the recommendations to put in the temporary infrastructure. So next slide, please. Thank you. So I think it would be short-sighted to assume that everybody is a regular cyclist in waiting. Through insight that we've gathered through our programmes, we know that communities across the country will face similar real and perceived barriers to regular cycling. So through our programmes, we're asking lots of questions as to, why don't you cycle? What obstacles do you face? What do you need to overcome to be able to cycle more regularly? And the three key barriers that we continue to see are confidence or a capability to cycle, perceptions of safety and a fear of being on the road, and thirdly, the weather. And as good as our behaviour change programmes are, we haven't yet managed to influence the UK weather, but it's something we're working on, so bear with us on that. Because we see these same barriers coming up year on year for people stopping to cycle or perhaps never having cycled, we're also working to how we can help people to overcome those barriers. So how can we be confident that we are helping to empower people to make changes and to choose to use the bike for short journeys or as part of a longer journey as well? So by using behaviour change tactics to help us look at what lies beneath the behaviour and looking at what's in its makeup. So what are the attitudes, what are the social norms, and ultimately what's somebody's motivation? And so how can we start to shape and change that to enable people to cycle more regularly or to start cycling? Next slide, please. Thank you. So we use two key methods for our behaviour change programmes at Cycling UK. Our two key programmes that we keep referencing are our Big Bike Revival programme and our Community Cycle Club programme. Both of the models that we use are widely used and relatable to lots of programmes in sport and physical activity, and they help us understand how we can empower people and enable change to happen. So the first one here, as we've got on the slide there, is the COMBI model. This assumes that for a behaviour to occur, there needs to be a change in in at least one of the three elements: the capability, the opportunity, and the motivation. So your capability is the psychological and physical ability to perform a behaviour, so in this case to cycle or to maintain your bike. Opportunity is looking at all the factors that are external to that individual, so it might be the environment that they're in, or the tools to conduct the behavioural or cultural background that surrounds them. And the third is the motivation, which is goal setting, planning, the processes that go into forming an emotion or a habit. So we'll come back to those and look at how they relate specifically to our programmes a little bit later. So then the second of the two models, on the next slide, is the self-determination theory. So this is looking all at the motivation of a person, and so it's splitting motivation into three basic human needs. So that's competence, relatedness, and autonomy. So autonomy is looking at which behaviours come from ourselves versus which are controlled. Competence is related to being able to control an outcome and have the ability to complete an action or a task. And then relatedness is that want to interact and be connected to others, feeling a part of something, which we all understand and have felt probably quite significantly through lockdown. So within the Big Bike Revival and our community cycle clubs, we focus on the competence and relatedness, which takes into account being able to do something. So in this case, as mentioned before, cycling, or being able to maintain your bike, and then also the desire to be connected to people or a community and that sense of belonging. And that's very much where our community cycle clubs focus, and that connection with others has been proven to be a major motivator in what changes people's behaviour. So now we've kind of gone through the theory, I'm going to talk through quite specifically about the behaviour change programmes that we deliver at Cycling UK, and how we've seen some changes in people's cycling levels. So the first one is our Big Bike Revival programme, and we mentioned there previously using the COM-B model to support the development of that programme. So the Big Bike Revival is delivered in communities working with independent bike shops, recycle centres, community groups, freelance mechanics. So it's about getting people back on their bikes or helping people to start cycling for the first time. So through our network of excellent cycling development officers and the satellite support that we can offer at Cycling UK, we're able to build lasting relationships in local communities so that we can see Big Bike Revival being delivered year on year. The key thing about the Big Bike Revival is it's delivering free events and activities in the heart of the community. So we're not expecting people to travel to a centre or to an event. It's about having pop-up events very close to where people are living and where those short journeys could be focused around on the bike. Relating it back to what's happening at the moment, we've obviously had to be very adaptable and able to respond quickly to a changing landscape. So we've been delivering a Big Bike Revival programme specifically for key workers, supporting those that need to get to work to cycle there. So whether that's through bike loans, whether it's through free equipment or servicing the bikes that they already own. So thanks to our local partnerships, we've been able to deliver that programme really quickly, supporting lots of key workers to be cycling to work. Usually, and obviously it's different at the moment, but over the last 12 months, we reached 60,000 people with the Big Bike Revival, supporting them to either start cycling or return to cycling. And we've seen a significant increase in cycling levels from those who attended Big Bike Revival events. Most importantly for this, and thinking about that changing of behaviour, 46% of the people who attended were non-regular cyclists, so those who wouldn't usually use the bike for short journeys, but also looking at the behaviour change that they have gone through, seeing that there is a significant increase in cycling levels of those who reported as a non-regular cyclist. We also know that 50% of the people attending the Big Bike Revival are female. We also work with a high proportion of BAME communities, and also many people living in deprived parts of the community, so those with low car ownership or high reliance on public transport, which is going to become an increasingly significant factor to consider when we're thinking about increasing cycling levels. So linking this back to the behaviour change methods model we talked about, we've adopted the fixed learn ride method that you can see on the screen there. So when we're thinking about capability, coming back to that as a key part of the behaviour change in the learn section of the programme, so where participants need to have the capability to ride the bike. So we not only address this with supporting their physically being able to ride a bike, but also looking at their attitudes towards cycling and their perceptions of fear associated to it. So ensuring that they feel confident and capable to cycle in their local community. The second is the opportunity. So this is where the fix part of the model comes in. So big aspect of the Big Bike Revival is fixing people's bikes. So we know that 42% of people currently own a bike, but don't necessarily use it. So how do we empower and enable those people to get back on those bikes? Well, allowing for more working bikes to be used also helps then create that social norm, and that's crucial for encouraging behaviour and linking back to that relatedness and feeling a part of something. And then thirdly, the motivation. So obviously you may well know how to ride a bike, you might have a working bike, but actually then bringing that to real life and encouraging people to actually cycle is looking at the ride part of the Big Bike Revival model. So once they've had their bike fixed and they've learnt the skills to overcome their barriers, we then set up local rides in the community, so getting to know local routes or perhaps buddying on their commute to work, or greenways or off-road routes so they don't have to tackle traffic and the road just yet. But then also setting up community cycle clubs, creating an informal and inclusive way to cycle with like-minded people who can ride together and motivate each other to start using the bike for more of those short journeys. So then that takes us on to the next part of the journey, which is our community cycle club programme, which is on the next slide, please. Thank you very much. And so this is very much about creating communities where people can feel safe and included to help build their confidence to cycle. It's community designed and led. So again, this coming back to having the cycling development officers working with local partners, with local authorities and councils, and community groups to set up a cycling offer for those who are new to cycling or lacking confidence or wanting to learn more. There's no need for them to have their own bike, to make it as inclusive as possible and break down as many barriers as there can be to somebody starting to cycle. They're informal groups, so there's no membership cost, there's no sort of barriers in terms of joining. It's very much about getting to know local routes and encouraging and supporting people to become more regular cyclists. By working with communities and really embedding our offer into a community, we're working with excellent volunteers who know the local area. We support them with training and development so they're able to lead those programs. So that relatedness and having a community of people like you around you who are encouraging each other to cycle helps to ensure it's a sustainable offer as well. So it's very much about creating a pathway and a journey that people can continue to cycle and not feeling that it's an offer that's been parachuted in, dropped, and then we walk away from it. So it's very much working with those community groups to continue to develop it. So we're sustaining activity through community champions. We're creating regular activity and understanding the communities that we work in, which means it's a very flexible and adaptable model depending on the local need. So then just to sort of reflect on how that then helps to come back to what Cycling UK is aiming to do, sort of enabling 1 million more people to cycle, creating healthier and happier communities. It's important to sort of reflect and look back at what we've learned and what we've achieved, but then also how we can continue to learn from that. So if you want to just flick onto the next slide and I will wrap up. So we're really encouraged to see that our network of Big Bike Revival centres continues to grow. We've got over 300 centres across the country, and we know that that's getting bigger year on year. Our community cycle club network is continuing to grow, and we're seeing some really excellent sustained activity working with our local authority partners and community groups who are really bought into sort of what we're doing and using cycling as a tool to connect people and empower people and sort of build that confidence and ultimately turning into regular cyclists through something they felt supported to do. We know that we're creating thousands of new cyclists and new trips each year through the data and research that we get back from the Big Bike Revival and our community cycle clubs. And we're confident that by continuing to work in this way and embedding delivery at a local level, we can help to support use of the new temporary infrastructure that's going up and ultimately seeing that turn into permanent infrastructure so that cycling continues to be the obvious choice for those short and essential journeys around your local community. So happy to take any questions as we come to the end of the presentations shortly, but thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to hearing Mel and Miriam's presentations to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny. That was great, and yeah, a really good oversight of the work we do within Cycling UK. There's one quick question I can answer very quickly that Alex has posed on the chat function here, saying, how do we deliver within the devolved nations, and do we deliver within the devolved administrations? Alex, we do. We deliver within Scotland. It's funded through Transport Scotland. The initiative, the Big Bike Revival that Jenny was describing there, is funded through the Department of Transport. In terms of Wales, which I think you're specifically asking, we don't currently deliver in Wales. We don't have any funding to do so. However, we are very keen. We're talking to local authorities within Wales and the devolved administration there, and there is real want for us to come and do some work there, which is exciting. So Jenny touched upon motivation there and attitudes, which segues really nicely into our next speaker, Mel. So Mel, if you don't mind popping back on screen and then talking about her spirit and the work that you do there, and yeah, how that ties in nicely with motivation. I'll hand over to you, Mel.
Yeah, thanks a lot, James, and thank you, Jenny, for your insight and a lot of kind of information, obviously, around the behaviour change models. So I can see myself, but I can't see kind of any presentation pop up. As if by magic. So yeah, look, thank you, everybody, and This is Her Spirit, and we're very privileged to have the opportunity to bring to life what we're doing. So my name's Mel Berry, and the other rider on the side is Holly Woodford, my co-founder. And both of us are very passionate cyclists from a travel point of view, all the way through to people that kind of ride bikes from a participation point of view. So let me tell you more about Her Spirit. So next slide, please. Okay, so Her Spirit is a community that provides a fun and safe place and supportive for every woman to, we call, get fitter, stronger and healthier. And for us, we embody everything within our app. So we call ourselves a personalised coaching app for your mind, body and fuel. And we look at a woman in a threefold in terms of a whole self. So we look at her mind, we look at her body, and we look at her fuel. And the stats that underpin the reason for that wholeness are, from a mind point of view, women are twice as likely to be diagnosed with anxiety than men. From a body point of view, 39% of the female population aren't active enough for a health benefit. And from a fuel point of view, e.g. food, is 50% of the population are on a constant diet, and only 1 in 10 women keep 5% off of their body weight. So for us, it's really, really kind of vitally important. What do? We offer daily sessions, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So just on our market analysis, which is the next slide. So like any brand developers and product developers, we researched the market thoroughly, and we looked at the health and wellness kind of sector, and the 4 sectors of sport, mind, weight loss and fitness. And what did we find? That it was fragmented, and no one looked at a woman in their whole self. And also it meant that there was very, very few sustainable kind of options, because no one business pinned themselves on behaviour change, and that's what we're here, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So going on to the behaviour change, we believe that there is a different way. And on to our next one, please. So what we have is a threefold approach, and I talked to you about that kind of earlier, but how do we underpin everything? So we work with a personalised approach, and that's looking at how a woman determines that. We underpin everything by a vibrant and strong community. And again, that behaviour change piece means that heart of our business is ourself and our community that we have. So let's have a look at it in its applicableness. So on to the next one, please. Okay, so at the heart of everything that we do is we know that capability is really, really key. And that's our one biggest kind of learning lesson over the last 2 years of our existence. We work predominantly on the COM-B model, and I won't go into it much detail because Jenny obviously did. And we've also then looked at behaviour change. How do we start? We work with Liverpool John Moores and one of their academics there, Dr. Paula Watson. But just picking up on the capability, because for us that's, it's our heart. As you can see on the right-hand side, we're about pathways, and that's the importance of understanding the functional capability, so the technical skills, and creating pathways, as Jenny talked about, is vitally important. So yes, you can go from zero, from somebody that hasn't felt confident enough to kind of ride your bike, all the way to achieving your own personal best. And your own personal best is obviously something that is determined by you other than others. Opportunities, you can see that we link into that and the creation of that side. I'll touch a little bit on our virtual events, but we well and truly supported Louise Minchin on the big biking, and it was really, really fantastic to see women that had never ridden a static bike before doing 2-3 hours, because they really felt something and they believed that they were capable enough and given that kind of opportunity. And last but not least is very much around the motivations. We have a daily motivation, so whether or not that's live classes, the ability for you to have interactivity with coaches and the community. We have access to our coaches across each sector, so that's the fuel just as much as the mind and the body. And we reward and track women through that, because we know the reward loop is kind of vitally important. But we believe in encouraging others to achieve their own personal best. So how does that relate to in cycling? It relates onto the next slide. And this is drawing on the importance of capability and making every woman feel safe. This is our cycling offer, but we've also brought to life Run Better Together, our 6-week fuel program. And let's obviously talk about the importance of our virtual bike with confidence. So virtual bike with confidence is headed up by our cycling lead, who's a wonderful woman, Michelle Charlin. Michelle is the woman in the middle slide that says bike with confidence, and it gives women the opportunity to then be able to look and understand how, through obviously that capability piece, they can learn about Michelle so they feel safe and they feel connected with her as an individual and a coach that's going to inspire them. From what do you wear to the helmet to what bike, again, the real kind of basic kind of fundamentals. Going through back into the middle, week 1 is around mounting and dismounting, braking, changing inner tubes and chains and tyres. And as you can see on the other side is again the other supporting information and opportunities that we give every woman to obviously become involved and be more confident on a bicycle. So going back to our behaviour change model, onto our next slide. How does this relate? So again, we have capability, opportunity and motivation. Without going through, you can see how that kind of relates. It's about skills and it's about learning new skills. We touched a bit on the first ones, but this is about a 6-week step or a 6-week program. We never limit to a specific time. It's about the individual choosing the time that they want to be able to obviously give to it. On the opportunity side is we have 2 weekly live sessions, and Michelle does that on a static, so whether or not that's on a turbo or that's something that, again, you've just kind of got your bike out. It doesn't matter what bike you ride, it doesn't matter what ability you ride, but you have 2 opportunities to then be part of a community. And our live stream on an app means anonymity, and that's really important. The women don't feel that they need to show themselves to the outside world, but they can still communicate through the power of the app and the kind of live streaming. We have weekly challenges that cement that and build confidence, and we've just finished our duathlon challenge, which was a resounding success with our community. And historically, we had live meetups, and we'll continue to bring that back to kind of life as obviously COVID unlocks. And we call them our Her Spirit Hubs, and they're our physical opportunity to meet in person. From a motivational point of view, as we talked about earlier, we do weekly emails, we do posts. Our cycling lead heads up our cycling group. So Michelle is open to be able to kind of have those conversations with kind of any and every woman. And again, everything's underpinned by that COM-B model. So let's talk about success stories, and on to our next slide. So our 2 wonderful next slide people, here we go. Okay, so we've got a dearth of kind of success stories, and it makes my heart sing when they come through. And I'm going to touch on the woman on the right hand side, the wonderful Tracy Brown. So Tracy Brown, I've only met once physically on her bicycle for very wet and windy opportunity, and Tracy subsequently has gone on to thrive significantly through the power of digital and the support of everything that we've talked about. You can see her pictorial of her duathlon, and I've never seen a cover like the one that obviously that Tracy had on a bicycle, but it kept her warm, it kept her safe, and it kept her dry. And it's a brilliant way for her to say, I've done something I never thought possible. What does Tracy say? She says that her anxiety has always been her biggest obstacle, but what's the worst that can happen? And her mantra is, in 12 hours time, it'll all be over. The hurdle has never been big as you imagine. So she's a fantastic success story, as is the wonderful Lisa on the side. I've never met, and nobody has ever met, Lisa. She's come into the community from a virtual point of view, and a couple of things that I'll extract from her quote, and it was hers, you know, by herself rather than kind of prompted, is from a capability point of view. The live sessions have enabled her to gain greater confidence. So it's from a capability point of view, her fitness. And then again is looking at, then she now is somebody that feels happy to go on the road and has subsequently gone back onto the road and has taken her kids with her because she feels safe to be able to do so. Okay, so they're 2 great examples. How does that relate to our partnership with Cycling UK? And on to our next slide. I've talked about Bike for Confidence in terms of what it is, and this is how we bring it to life digitally. There's Michelle. and there is a lot of the imagery that we use. So it's a kind of a multitude of different women, all with big smile on their faces, and our underpinning strapline and everything that we do is together we've got this. So that's kind of really key to us, is the importance of togetherness. So just going to conclude on a couple of slides, and that's going on to our cause-related campaign, and James touched on it before. Through the power and support of Sport England, we were able to unlock the app for free, and it continues to be free until the end of June. And underpinning our cause-related campaign is what we call Every Minute Counts. So for every minute that a woman is active, whether or not she's walking, cycling, or just generally kind of moving, we ask them to donate their minutes every week and use the hashtag Every Minute Counts into the app. We love people to tell their stories pictorially and inspirationally, because we know that inspiration from others is critically important. And for every 500 minutes, we will gift a free subscription to a woman that can't afford it, so on low or no income, and are currently in discussions and working with Cycling UK in a lot of their kind of deprived areas, as well as other charities such as Women's Trust, and backup, which is it's again really important for us to then be able to kind of deliver on our what has always been cause-related campaign. So to finish on it, partnerships are at the heart of everything. We talk about our partnership with Cycling UK. Who else have we collaborated with? You can see, you know, kind of a plethora of, and just pulling out the cycling, British Cycling. We work with Mango, because we believe Mango is a great product, and again has very much a bike for they call it a bike for non-cyclists, as well as people like obviously kind of London Triathlon and Sport England being at the heart of what we do. How do we make it work? Because I'm sure many of you will ask, well, that's great, but how do you fund it? Which is on to our next slide. So we have a free offer for now. So any woman that's listening, any local authority that wants to become part of this, then please get in touch with us. On the 1st of July, we will turn the pay tap on, and we will also have a freemium offer, which is delivering on our promise, enabling every woman to be healthier, happier, fitter and stronger. But from an affordability point of view, our premium offer at £4.99 per month or £49.99 annually means that you can have a dearth of mind, body and fuel programs. We have on-demand classes daily, access to group, access to coaches. So there's so much in there. And to conclude, what is our mission? Our mission, and our last slide, is very bold. And we believe in boldness, and we believe that we will reach 1 million women that will be more active and healthier through us on that journey. And our blended funding model of private and public sector means that it will be accessible and available for every woman, no matter what they and where they come from. So that's everything about Her Spirit. Hopefully it's brought it to life. Please sign up, download the app, come and join us on a journey and help us make a significant difference to a phenomenal amount of women. So thank you for the opportunity. So that's me.
Thanks, Mel. Thanks very much. We'll go on to Miriam quickly. We're running slightly over time, but people are holding on, which is great. We're talking about some really interesting and important topics here. You mentioned big data there, Mel, and how that informs behaviour change. That's definitely something that we use at Cycling UK, and more people are using, especially local authorities. Looking at data and looking at the context is always extremely important. And attitudes are one of the biggest things within behaviour change. People's attitudes to their behaviour, be it positive or negative, is extremely important. I'm now going to bring in our next guest, Miriam, and then hand over to you, Miriam.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I see we're running a little bit out of time, so we'll keep it brief. I think many of you will have a new meeting at 4 o'clock here in the Netherlands, 3 o'clock in the UK. Briefly, my name is Miriam Worsbo, and I'm working, maybe next slide, we'll do it very quickly today. I'm working at the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management in The Hague in the Netherlands. And as you can see, I like orange a lot. Just kidding, I like cycling. And I'm, used before the corona, I traveled a lot to help cities, countries worldwide to explore on how to get more people cycling. Next slide, please. Well, if you see, I think we already talked about it. There's a huge window of opportunity. You never waste a good crisis, as we sometimes say in the Netherlands. We've had this situation in the 70s. There was an oil crisis, dollar crisis, and we tried to turn it into a good thing. And we had a lot of protests in the Netherlands, maybe for some of you who know. And therefore, we started up in the 1970s, building up our cycling culture, building up the infrastructure, because we had a lot of accidents back then. And so it took us also some decades. So I think I know quite some situations in the UK. When we continue to the next slide, you'll see worldwide there's a lot of changes happening, and especially in infrastructure pop-up lanes we've seen in Berlin, but also Paris, Milano, you see, and I know in the UK there's happening a lot too, in London, but also Scotland, Ireland. There's a lot of things happening, I know, which is great, but it's also temporarily sometimes, so we should try to see how we can make the best out of that. Quite inspired by the previous presentations, by the way, to get more women cycle as well. Very nice, and especially safe infrastructure should be part of that. So when we go to the next slide, we always try to say in the Netherlands, we figured out like it's not just infrastructure indeed. And that was why I was very happy with the invitation for today on behavior change, because we normally say we have 3 main ingredients to get a sort of cycling inclusive mobility, as we call it, which is hardware, software, and orgware. And the hardware is more the physical part, infrastructure, but also parking facilities, for example. You have the software side, which is more the human side of the mobility, the behavior change, how to get people cycling, what's holding them back. It's also an important part, and how to solve that, of course. And orgware is more on how we're working together, policymakers, stakeholders, how do you cooperate, because we have the same goal ahead of us. We want to get more people on the bike, and how do we get there? Well, I just handpicked some examples, and mainly on infrastructure to start with, because I think that's a very important part is safe infrastructure. This is an example of the Fietsstraat in the Netherlands. The car is allowed, but is a guest, so should be behind the cyclist. And you see these streets around schools, for example, but also on going through roads, more and more being built. So it's a very good development. It's purely inspiration as well, because this could be pointed out. This could be designed in the UK, I think, as well. And of course, not every street, that's not necessary, but in some streets. But also a very important part is the network approach to it. And you see here on the picture, this is a network map of fast cycling routes, so mainly between cities. It's being used by commuters also a lot. It's about improving the current routes, mostly widen or make new pavement, creating new routes, and connect the existing infrastructure to each other. Well, next part on the software side. If we click through, also have my presentation here, you need some leadership, preferably political leadership. This is our state secretary, Stientje van Veldhoven. We're very lucky with her, having her in this 4-year period. Next year we have new elections, so we'll see. But for now, we are very, very happy with having Stientje. She's very pushing the bicycle on a higher agenda, and you need somebody like that. So I'm very happy with the beginning of this webinar, of course. You need political leadership in that sense. So, and I think you're good in the UK. Next one is another example of software which is working together. This is our employers ambassadors approach. So you see some different employers in the Netherlands. Maybe you know Schiphol, of course, the airport, a big employer in the Netherlands. But also maybe you know Efteling, which is a fairy tale park. And these specifically handpicked employers are rolling out some facilities for their employees. It's really depending on what their employees need. So sometimes it's just simple showers, sometimes it's a maintenance department, sometimes it's a financial leasing construct. So depending on the needs of their own employees, these employers know what to do, and we try to combine them all and in some sort of consortium of cycling ambassadors. When we continue, the final part is the orgware part, working together. Well, we try to set up an organization in the Netherlands. For a long time, we didn't even have a national cycling strategy, but for now, We are working together with we are the national government, but there's of course also the provinces and also the municipalities. And we are combined with all of them in the Tour de Force, but also external stakeholders like the AMBW or the Fietsersbond. They're all included into this working group. And you see we have 5 different themes we're working on. I think the slides can be shared as well in the end, so I'll continue for now with another Orgware example, which is on cycling safety. It's the Doortrappen program, Cycle On program. It's for elderly people because the research showed that mostly the accidents were mostly among elderly people going, especially also on e-bikes, but also on normal bikes, some accidents happened. So we developed this program to inform them mainly on how to keep cycling in a safe way, doing some exercises to have their balance, for example. It's a very nice program in that sense. I think I'd like to conclude. I've shown you some examples of hardware which you need: cycling streets and a network of routes. Software, political leadership is very important. Also employers approach, or at least work together with employers in your country. And the Orgware part is very important, because how do you organize this whole stakeholder approach? You can do it in different ways, and in the Netherlands we did it with Tour de Force and a program on traffic safety called Cycle On. A brief slide, I already showed you some examples worldwide. If you want to know more project, I think regarding time is a bit limited today, but on www.cycling.nl, there's a lot of projects that gathered worldwide. So whatever you're interested in, for example, in Bogota, there's a very nice bottom-up movements going on. People, for years, to be honest, it's a real cycling country. While, for example, in other cities like Germany, we see more a top-down approach on government level. So different countries, different approaches. And if you want to know more information, you can always send an email or let me know, and we can schedule an additional call if you have more questions. That's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Miriam. That's brilliant. That's really insightful. We've heard from all of our speakers now. Hopefully that helps build a bit of a bigger picture to the listeners tuning in about what goes into changing behaviour, particularly around building a habit. And I've just got a few points here. I'll do a very quick 5 minutes worth of questions. So changing behaviour is difficult. We know that from a behavioural science point of view, it can be very difficult. And building a habit usually takes around 66 days to install. But what's really interesting here is we've got the individual approach from sort of Her Spirit that definitely ties in, and changing behaviour at an individual level through motivation and through gamification, which really helps and it definitely works. But then they've got the community approach, which Jenny was talking about, through the Big Bike Revival, and then changing people's behaviour at a community level is great through social norms. If you feel your neighbour's doing something, you're likely to do the same behaviour. We've got the evidence behind that. And then we've got what Miriam touched upon with the policy and the political will as well, and how that is vitally important. And I think we all know political will is definitely, it has to be there if you want to change behaviour at a big participation level. There's one really interesting question that's come up. There's lots of interesting questions that have come up. I'm going to start with this one, and I'll just throw it out there. And actually, maybe Jenny, you can start with answering this one. So someone's posed the question, can using the word cyclist perhaps be a little exclusive, i.e. conjure up certain connections with lycra, mammals, sports cyclists, etc.? And would this using the term people on bikes, would that be better?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good point, and something that we actually use quite a lot when we're talking with community groups or with partners and sort of setting up programs, is really focusing on that kind of, it's people on bikes rather than cyclists. And I think a lot of people who use the bike for, whether it's commuting or short journeys or, you know, socially with their friends, whatever it might be, wouldn't necessarily consider themselves to be a cyclist. They're going on a bike ride, or they just happen to be using the bike for that journey. So yeah, completely agree. And I think that's something that absolutely you wouldn't want to use a sort of a term or a name for a group of people that might then put somebody off or create an exclusivity around an activity that really is just using a different form of transport for those short journeys or longer journeys if you choose as well.
Yeah, and Miriam, same question to you. I mean, in the Netherlands, it's slightly different. Do you class people as cyclists, or are they just people?
Depending on who you're asking, indeed, it's interesting approach, because recent years we focused on cycling a lot, but I think since 1 year there's pedestrians added to the table. I think it's a very good approach, because indeed it's people using. Sometimes I'm a cyclist, sometimes I'm a car driver, sometimes I'm a pedestrian. Most of the time I'm a cyclist, also commuting, but also for sport. But indeed, we try to to broaden the approach, and yeah, people are people, so we need to approach them that way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, with behaviour change, the language you use is incredibly important. Language, it definitely persuades how you change your behaviour and your attitudes towards it. So I think going forward, we all need to be mindful about how we class people using bikes, and maybe we do get away from the term cyclist. Mel, you've got your hand up, but there's another question. Sorry, we'll come back to it in just a second.
Very quickly to answer that, it's about customer segmentation. So at the embryonic stage of our product, that's why we call it Bike with Confidence. And we listened and we learned to kind of Jenny from our conversation, hence why it's Bike with Confidence. And when you become a cyclist, you have more relatability. So that's the reason why we did call it that. So yeah, it's working with you guys to help on that side as well.
Yeah, great point. There's a question here for Miriam. Someone said, is there a specific way employers in Holland encourage staff to cycle that you know
of? We talked a lot with different employers, and they had different needs. So we try to sort of overlap everything and see what we can do as a national government. And people got some sort of a fee, a kilometer fee for like 19 cents if you go by car. So, but it's also allowed to give that to your cyclist if you go to work by bike to get 19 cents a kilometer if you cycle. So you doesn't need to go by car apparently. But in addition, we noticed that there was an extra demand for a lease bike, like you have a lease car. There was a lot of lease cars in the Netherlands. But apparently there was also a huge need for lease bikes. So since the 1st of January, we now have a lease bike construction in the Netherlands. So we, as a national government, we try to overlap and ask the employers, what do you need from us? And there was apparently a financial structure on how to provide lease bikes to their employees. In general, they all do their own thing. So in general, people want to go, if they want to commute to work, a shower is very nice. A maintenance area is very nice. Good parking facilities and charging, because more and more e-bikes, of course, is very, those kind of are, yeah, at least some things we very encourage employers to install to make a start. Of course, they are also limited budgets, so sometimes they do a survey among their employees, and it's a bit depending where they start with per employer. That differs. I hope that answers.
Yeah, no, very, very good to know. There was actually a scientific study, I can't remember the name of it, on behaviour change and looking at employers within England. And they said the two biggest things to get people cycling to work were showers and making people feel confident to cycle on the road. So it leads back to what Jenny was talking about, and Mel, and actually you, Miriam, about people feeling confident to use the space there. And this is just a question for you, Miriam, but opening it up for everyone. Do you think designing the right space is integral for changing someone's behaviour? I mean, the evidence is out there that the environment is one of the biggest predictors on how we interact with our behaviour. Do you think building the right cycle paths will definitely help change behaviour by itself?
Yeah, we all know the saying, right? Build and they will come. I do have seen worldwide some infrastructure hardly being used, so it's not always the case. But in I think 90% of the cases, build and they will come is the case, because nowadays so many people want to cycle, but especially the I think you call it mammals are cycling now on the infrastructure. If it's safe or not, they don't care. They just go, which is good, because you need to these people to start. Someone has to start. But then the critical mass, of course. And if you build safe infrastructure, we just see worldwide, they will come. And especially because that's what my concern is a little bit on this pop-up lanes is temporarily. And of course it's something and it's a change, but it needs to be safe and especially dedicated, especially when you not make it temporarily, but you actually make it in place. please be careful on what you're designing for, and not just a line on the road. That's not enough. You need a real dedicated, safe infrastructure, not only on the straight parts, also on the junctions. So that's what we really like to help with as well.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think we're out of time. I'm really sorry, everyone. That was great. Thank you so much for the presentations and for the questions. There's a lot of questions in the chat that were actually aimed at Chris earlier on. We've actually taken a screenshot of all those questions, and what we'll do is we'll fire them back over to Chris, and hopefully he can answer them if he has the time, and then we'll upload them on either our Facebook or we'll try and get them answered somehow. So you'll get your questions there. There's a whole series of these webinars going on for the rest of this week. You can find out all the information on our webpage and on the Bike Week website as well. All I have to say now is thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you so much, Mel. And thank you, Jenny. That was really good insight. And thank you for joining in and listening. Hopefully that gives you a good indication of what you need to do to change behaviour and building habits. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jane.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.